Good morning, my Real News Midday TV family. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning for another news update for Sunday, October 5, 2025. And I'm wishing for everyone a wonderful and a blessed Sunday. And in the news this morning, community mother killed in Denham Town. Grief and a shock blanket a section of West Kingston following the fatal shooting of one of their own last Sunday afternoon. The deceased woman, Walata Brown, is a well-known figure in the Oxford Street area of Denham Town and is described by residents as being a community mother. When the news visited the area on Thursday, several of Brown's children gathered outside her yard. One of them, a son, spoke to the news team with sad and weary eyes. She was a very responsible mother, not just to me and my siblings, but to all the youth them in the community. Every youth where you see right here, so as she responsible for them, and them grow in our hands, he said. According to police reports, about 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, Brown, a 48-year-old businesswoman, was shot by an unknown assailant in her house on Oxford Street. The police were alerted, and Brown was rushed to the Kingston Public Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Area 4 Commander Senior Superintendent Michael Phipps said that the getaway vehicle was intercepted in St. Thomas on Sunday, and the suspect was taken into custody. On Thursday, Brown's mother, Hyacinth Williams, was also a picture of grief. Her eyes welled up with tears as she told the news team that she had lost her hands and a foot. Everybody loved my daughter and she was very responsible. She wasn't a talkative person, but the whole community loved her. Me did a work at a place and my foot get sick. And my daughter and father God make me stand up here so, because she take care of me. Walata was my hands and foot. All now me can't stop crying, Williams said. Brown urges public sector staff orders wrongly used in interpretation of medical doctor. Trade unionist Lambert Brown, an industrial relations advisor to the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, is claiming that the orders used for the interpretation of Dr. R.J. Dixon are not applicable amid discussions about the September 17 disciplinary notice served on the medical doctor following his participation as a candidate in the September 3 general election. Dixon is a losing People's National Party candidate in Clarendon North Central. He was served a notice by letter of his interdiction, which began on September 17. Brown, a PNP senator who has been a trade unionist for more than 50 years, told the news that while Dixon works in the public service, he was not covered under the public sector staff orders used in the matter. In describing the staff orders, Brown said it's a policy. It is neither a contract nor a law. The Constitution is a supreme law. Since the staff orders came out in the 1960s, it hasn't been changed much since, except for a 2004 amendment. But I believe that there are rules from what existed originally, and in fact, that clause needs to go because that clause has not met the Charter of Rights provisions. According to Brown, who claimed he was not giving his opinion as an advisor to the JMDA or as a representative of the PNP, where the orders applies, the ultimate arbiter of disciplinary action would be the Services Commission. So for the civil servant at the Ministry of Health, their matters go to the Services Commission for discipline. In the case of Dr. Dixon, it doesn't go to the Services Commission. It goes to the regional board, and that makes it fundamentally different. Because in the case of a civil servant, their case, for example, cannot go to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, he told the news. The veteran trade unionist went further. He suggested that the Ministry of Health and Wellness was meddling where it shouldn't, citing the September 17, 2024 memo to staff from Permanent Secretary Errol Green to regional directors of the 4 health regions, captioned engagement in political activities, and a copy to the Principal Director for Corporate Services and the Senior Director for Human Resources Management and Development. It cited Staff Order 4.2.61, which is used as the basis for Dixon's interdiction. The section of the staff orders for the public service states that officers are expressly forbidden to engage in any type of partisan political activity in any elections at any level. Green's letter urged the bodies to take the required steps to ensure that any staff member who intends to actively participate in the political process disengages themselves from employment within the health authority. That letter from the permanent secretary had denoted the regional health authority for Brown a clear indication that any disciplinary action being contemplated was by the government through the ministry. He also pointed to the interdiction notice written on the Ministry of Health letterhead in arguing that the action was one taken by the government. Dr. Dixon is not employed to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Like most doctors in the country, he is employed to a statutory body. In this case, the Southern Regional Health Authority, which was established in 1997 by an Act of Parliament called the National Health Services Act, that set up several regional authorities. Each of them has a board, but the board is answerable to the Ministry of Health. Each regional authority has its own authority in law since then and are separated from the civil service, and they are not public officers in the way that a public officer is used in the staff orders. If the Ministry of Health gets involved in this, and they have, because of Errol Green's letter, he is imposing a civil service standard which is not correct, because the civil service and the statutory body operate with different rules, he insisted. He believes the Supreme Court judgment handed down by Chief Justice Brian Sykes of May 26, 2025 addresses the issue. It involved the termination of a former center manager for the Jamaica 4-H clubs who took the entity to court for terminating his employment. He was seeking reinstatement and the damages, but the Chief Justice ruled that he was not a public servant. The man who was first temporarily employed as center manager at the Denham 4-H Center Clarendon in August 2008 was in 2009 assigned additional duties by the board as center manager at the Vernon Field 4-H Center, also in Clarendon. As outlined to the court, the board in another letter dated February 18, 2011 indicated that the period of temporary employment was extended to August 3 of that year. He was also reminded that the temporary employment related to a position which was not vacant but hinged on the expiration of a school project in August that year. By writs of certiorari, he sought to have the court quash the decision to end his employment, and by mandamus sought to compel the board to re-employ him in the position he was in at the time of the termination. The Chief Justice, in handing down judgment, said the judicial traffic in these circumstances was one way. Employment by a statutory body without more, he said, does not transform the employee into a public servant within the meaning of the Constitution of Jamaica. Brown said that while case law exists in 2 Caribbean jurisdictions, he believes that the precedent for Dixon's case is in this judgment. Meanwhile, the JMDA said it is in talks with the regional body. The JMDA is currently engaged in discussions with the Southern Regional Health Authority regarding the interdiction of Mr. Dixon. The matter is ongoing and sensitive, and we are unable to provide details at this time, said JMDA President Dr. Renee Badrow in response to the news. She said a planned September 29 meeting was cancelled due to the unavailability of key members of the industrial relations teams of the JMDA, and that the date for hearing is to be confirmed. Asked whether Dixon received a salary for September, she said, "We will not comment on Dr. Dixon's personal finances." Asked also if the JMDA would seek a definitive ruling from the courts or IDT, she said the union will rely on the relevant professionals regarding the legal concerns of the case. At the same time, Zulika Jess, the PNP's spokesperson on justice, said nothing is off the table. The party is considering all available options, she told the news. Previously, Jess had stated in a release from the PNP that this action undermines civic participation and threatens the very freedoms our democracy is meant to protect. Such a move, whether the result of an overly zealous application of policy or misinterpretation of staff orders has the effect of silencing those who seek to exercise their constitutional rights. In seeking to counter the PNP's position on the matter, JLP operatives have sought to paint the opposition as hypocritical. They pointed out that in March 2020, months before that year's general election was called, the PNP complained to Donna Parchment Brown, the political ombudsman at the time, about Tova Hamilton, who was serving as a deputy executive director of the Tourism Product Development Company, and the JLP caretaker for Trelawney Northern, and Rhoda Crawford, who had recently been announced as a likely challenger to Peter Bunting's reign in Manchester Central. With the election due that year, the PNP had said Hamilton's case was the most serious because of the larger resources under the disposal of the TPDCO. The PNP argued then that it was a breach of civil service rules for persons employed by the state to openly engage in political activities. Speaking with the news on the matter at the time, JLP General Secretary Dr. Harris Chang said he disagreed that any civil service rules were being broken. They are required to resign when an election is called in terms of where they are employed to the state. Government is by far the largest employer of professionals in our country. You cannot alienate those people from participating, Chang had said. When you are part of the civil service, you are to get the permission of your permanent secretary and you resign during the election period, Chang said, adding that he was a medical officer in Hanover before resigning the year of the 1980 election to contest a seat there. That resignation from Chang would have taken place more than 2 decades before the 2004 amendment to the staff orders. Guys, thanks for watching. Please join us this afternoon at 2 p.m. for another news update.